My own son and his wife. They left me burning up with a fever on New Year's Eve while they sat glued to some damn Netflix drama. I begged them, just drive me to the pharmacy. But all I got was a wave of the hand, like I was some nuisance in my own house. That night, in my delirium, I slipped. I told them about the nest egg I'd worked 40 years to build, $250,000 in savings, plus the house, paid off and worth more than $500,000. I saw the flicker in her eyes, that little spark of greed, and right then I knew this wasn't just family anymore. This was a vulture, circling a man too weak to fight back. But here's the thing, she had no idea who she was dealing with. She thought I was just an old man fading out. She thought my story was almost over. She was wrong. And when I finally got back on my feet, I did something they'd never forget. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening in the comments. The fever came at me like fire under the skin. My head pounded, sweat soaked my shirt, and every breath rattled like dry leaves. I'd never felt so weak. But the real pain wasn't the sickness. It was the silence. The two of them sat just 20 feet away, laughing at some cliffhanger, while I shivered in the dark. My granddaughter, Julia, peeked in once, eyes full of worry, but she was just a child. The adults, they chose to pretend I didn't exist. When I finally spoke up, when I told them about the savings, the house, the years of sacrifice, I wasn't just ranting. I was warning them. Only I didn't know it yet. I thought maybe it would shame them into caring. Instead, it lit a fire of another kind. Madeline's sudden kindness felt sweet as spoiled milk. Her voice softened, her smile sharpened, and she offered to drive me to the pharmacy herself. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't help. This was a setup. Because the moment I stepped out of that car, she'd already decided how to end me. She fussed over me like some TV nurse. But every word dripped with calculation. Don't worry, Owen, I'll take care of you. We'll get you just what you need. Her hand even brushed my arm, gentle as a spider testing its web. My son trailed behind us, silent, almost embarrassed to look me in the eye. He wasn't protecting me. He was letting her run the show. I sat in the passenger seat of my own car, the December night biting through the glass. The road sparkled with leftover Christmas lights, houses glowing with wreaths and candy cane arches. I should have felt comforted. Instead, every flicker of red and green made me think of warning signs. Madeline kept talking, asking about my future plans, the will, who'd inherit what. Her voice was sweet, but her eyes never left the road, locked straight ahead like a predator stalking prey. I remember coughing hard, my chest burning, while she reached over and patted my knee. "Don't worry, Dad, soon you'll be resting easy," she said. The words were off, too final, like she was rehearsing lines. Julia sat in the back seat, clutching her little stuffed reindeer, watching everything with those wide, unblinking eyes. Kids notice more than we give them credit for. At the pharmacy, I stumbled toward the counter, realizing I'd left my wallet in the car. My body ached. My head felt like it was splitting, so I muttered an apology and turned back. What I didn't see, but Julia did, was Madeline tearing into the bag the pharmacist had just sealed, her hands quick, her face tight with focus. She swapped the pills with something else, slid the bag shut, and smiled when I opened the door. That smile wasn't warmth. It was a death sentence wrapped in lipstick. And as I reached the bag, Julia's little voice cut the air like a knife. "Grandpa, something's wrong." The words froze me. Something's wrong. Julia's tone wasn't whiny or childish. It was sharp, steady, like she'd just seen a monster crawl out from under the bed. I looked at her in the rear-view mirror. Her little hands clutched that reindeer so tight the seam strained, her eyes locked on the pharmacy bag in Madeline's lap. Madeline chuckled nervously, waving it off. "She's just tired, Owen. Kids get dramatic when it's late." But her voice cracked on the word dramatic. My gut twisted. I'd been in boardrooms where men tried to lie through their teeth about millions of dollars. I knew the sound of a bluff about to collapse. I leaned back, fever making me dizzy, but something inside me snapped awake. What if Julia wasn't just imagining things? My granddaughter had always been sharp. sharper than her parents gave her credit for. At the counter, the pharmacist had glanced at me strangely when I left my wallet, a flicker of hesitation in his eyes. Now Julia's warning echoed it. My instinct screamed louder than the pounding in my head. I forced my voice steady. "Julia, what do you mean, sweetheart? What's wrong?" Madeline's grip on the steering wheel tightened until her knuckles went pale. "Don't put ideas in her head," she hissed. Her sweetness was gone now, her mask slipping just for a second. The car rolled out a lot, but before we hit the street, bright fluorescent lights swept across the windshield. A knock on the window. The pharmacist, breath clouding in the cold, motioned for me to step out. Madeline's smile cracked like glass. That was the moment I realized. This wasn't just suspicion. Something real, something dangerous, had just been caught in the act. The knock on the glass was sharp, urgent, like the sound of judgment itself. I pushed the door open, shivering as the night air hit me. The pharmacist's face was pale, his jaw set tight. He wasn't the kind of man to leave his warm store at midnight unless it was serious. "Owen," he said, voice low but firm, "I need you to come back inside. Right now." Behind me, I heard Madeline's voice rise too high, too cheerful. "Oh, is there a problem?" "We're just heading home. He's exhausted, you know." Her words spilled out fast, as if speed could cover the cracks. The pharmacist didn't even look at her. His eyes locked on me, then flicked to Julia in the back seat. "It's important." My legs trembled, but not from the fever. Something heavier pressed down, like the weight of every red flag I'd ignored these last 3 years. I turned, meeting Madeline's stare. For the first time, she didn't bother faking kindness. Her smile was gone, replaced by something colder, reptilian. Inside the pharmacy, the man led me behind the counter, away from her sight. He slid the bag onto the counter and pointed to the security screen. Grainy black and white footage rolled. Madeline's hand slipping into the pharmacy sack, her body angled just enough to block the camera from clerk, her fingers swapping bottles with slick precision. My stomach dropped. Not paranoia, not fever dreams. Proof. "She tried to switch your antibiotics," the pharmacist said quietly. "If you'd taken these pills, well, you wouldn't have made it through the week." For a second, all I heard was the hum of the cooler, the faint buzz of fluorescent lights. Then Julia's small voice echoed in my head. "Grandpa, something's wrong." I tightened my grip on the counter. Madeline thought she was writing my ending. She had no idea. I was just beginning to write hers. The pharmacist handed me the real prescription, sealed and untouched. My hands shook as I held the bottle, part fever, part fury. I'd built a life on details, on spotting numbers that didn't add up, but I never thought I'd have to use that same instinct to survive my own family. Through the glass doors, I could see her pacing in the car, eyes darting, jaw clenched. She knew something had gone wrong. Julia sat frozen in the back seat, her small face lit by the dashboard glow, watching her mother like a hawk. That little girl was braver than anyone gave her credit for. The pharmacist leaned closer. "Do you want to call the police?" For a moment, the thought tempted me. But then I pictured headlines, the whispers at church, the pitying looks from neighbors. My dirty laundry hung out for the whole town to see, while she would twist every detail, play the grieving daughter-in-law. No, not yet. This wasn't the moment. I shook my head. "Not now, but keep that tape. Don't you dare erase it." He nodded, slipping the flash drive into an envelope. Evidence. My lifeline. When I stepped back into the night air, Madeline plastered on her sugar-sweet smile. "Everything okay? You had us worried." I slid into the passenger seat, gripping the bag tight. "Everything's fine," I muttered, staring out the window. But inside, my mind was on fire, because in that moment I understood she hadn't just tried to poison me. She'd underestimated me. And that's a mistake people like her don't come back from. The car pulled away from the pharmacy, Christmas lights blurring past. And while she thought the game was over, I was already planning my first move. Back at the house, the warmth from the fireplace felt hollow, like stage lighting on a bad set. Madeline ushered me in with exaggerated care, her voice syrupy. Come on, Owen, let's get you settled. You'll feel better in no time. She even fluffed the pillow on the couch, like some doting nurse. I almost laughed. She had no clue I'd seen her mask slip. I sank down, letting the fever show on my face, but inside I was steady, watching. She moved around the room like an actress hitting her marks, offering tea, adjusting blankets. Every gesture was rehearsed, every smile too sharp at the edges. My son sat in the armchair, silent, his eyes glued to his phone. He couldn't even look at me. Whether it was shame or denial, I didn't know. Maybe both. Julia, though, she sat at my side. She leaned in close and whispered, "Grandpa, I saw what she did." I told the man. Her small hand slipped into mine, warm and certain. That touch did more for me than any medicine could. I looked at her, at that fierce little spark in her eyes, and made a silent promise. I would not let her grow up in a house where betrayal went unpunished. Madeline returned with a steaming mug, setting it down carefully. "Drink this. It'll help you sleep." I stared at the cup, at the steam curling like ghostly fingers. Then I looked up at her and forced a weak smile. "You first." The pause that followed was golden. Just a flicker, but I saw it, her confidence cracking. She laughed it off, lifting the cup with a fake chuckle. "Oh, don't be silly." But she set it down untouched. That was the first time I saw fear in her eyes. And I knew then I had her cornered, even if she didn't realize it yet. That night, I didn't sleep. The fever burned through me, but my mind was sharper than it had been in years. Lying there, I replayed every second. Her hand in that pharmacy bag, Julia's warning, the pharmacist's footage. Evidence. Proof. She thought she was the one pulling strings, but she'd handed me the rope to hang her with. From the hallway, I could hear them whispering. "Madeline's is carry clear. He's too stubborn. If this doesn't work, we'll never get the house. Do you understand? We'll be stuck forever." And then my son's voice, low, uncertain. "Maybe there's another way. He's sick, let play out." Play out. As if my death were just a season finale. My own flesh and blood, waiting for the credits to roll. My chest tightened, not from fever this time, but from a grief so heavy it turned to steel. Julia patted in quietly, her reindeer tucked under one arm. She climbed onto the couch beside me and whispered, "I don't like it here, Grandpa. Mom's different. She's scary." I squeezed her hand. "You're not wrong," I told her. My voice was hoarse but steady. "But don't you worry. Grandpa's got a plan." She nodded, serious as any soldier, and drifted off against my arm. Watching her sleep, I realized this wasn't just about me anymore. This was about teaching her the truth, that evil doesn't win just because it wears a smile. By morning, I'd made my choice. I wasn't going to the police. Not yet. No, I was going to build something better. A stage big enough that when their mask finally slipped, the whole world would see what was underneath, and I'd be the one pulling the curtain. By January 2nd, the fever finally began to break. My body was weak, but my will had never felt stronger. Madeline fluttered around the kitchen, making pancakes she never used to cook, humming too loudly, pretending everything was normal. My son barely spoke, burying himself in his phone like a teenager. The charade would have been comical if it wasn't so poisonous. I sat at the table, watching them. Every move, every word, I stored away like ammunition. When Madeline set a plate in front of me, she leaned close and whispered, "You'll be back on your feet in no time. Owen, then maybe we can talk about your will. Just to get things clear, you know." Her smile cut like a blade. I smiled back, steady. "Don't worry. Everything will be crystal clear soon." Her eyes narrowed, just for a moment, and I knew she heard the weight in my words. That afternoon, I made the call. My lawyer answered, surprised to hear from me so soon after the holidays. "I want a full rewrite," I said. "Not a revision. A clean slate. New beneficiaries." He paused. "All of it, Owen?" "All of it," I said. My voice didn't shake. "House, savings, everything. Give it to the veteran charities we talked about years back. Not a cent to my son or his wife." There was silence on the line, then a soft, Approving sigh. Understood. As I hung up, Julia came into the room, clutching her reindeer. Grandpa, why are you smiling? I bent down, kissed the top of her head. Because, sweetheart, sometimes the best revenge isn't what you take back. It's what you give away. And as the words left my mouth, I could already picture it. The look on their faces when they realized the fortune they tried to kill me for had slipped right through their fingers. That would be my first strike, and it would land harder than any poison. The morning I left for the lawyer's office, I didn't tell a soul. I let them think I was going for a simple checkup. Madeline even kissed me on the cheek before I walked out, her lips cold, her eyes darting toward the car keys like she wanted to know if I'd make it back. My son mumbled something that sounded like, "Good luck," but he never looked up from his phone. At the office, the papers were ready. Crisp, heavy stock, the kind of documents that carried weight far beyond their ink. I read every line slowly, savoring it. The charities were listed, names of organizations that had carried brothers in arms when no one else would. Men who fought beside me deserved better than the vipers sitting rent-free in my home. I signed with a steady hand, my fever long gone. The lawyer slid the folder back to me. "It's official," he said, effective immediately. I stepped outside into the cold January air, the city still strung with holiday lights, and felt lighter than I had in years. The house, the savings, no longer bait for predators, just a gift to people who'd earned it. But I wasn't done, not even close. Paperwork was the first move. The next one had to be personal. That evening, I gathered them all in the living room. Madeline perched on the edge of the couch, rehearsed sweetness painted across her face. My son leaned back, detached as ever. Julia sat beside me, clutching her reindeer tight. I cleared my throat. I paid a visit to my lawyer today. Madeline's smile twitched. "Oh, about the will." "Exactly about the will," I said. Then I paused, letting the silence thicken. "And let's just say, the two of you won't have to worry about my estate anymore." Her eyes flickered, first confusion, then panic. And in that moment, I knew I had their full attention. The game had just shifted. Madeline laughed, too loud, too sharp, the sound bouncing off the walls like broken glass. "Owen, don't joke like that. You know how important family is." Her voice dripped with sugar, but her hands twisted the hem of her sweater, knuckles white. I leaned back in my chair, steady as stone. "I'm not joking. I've changed everything. The house, the savings, it's all spoken for. Not a penny goes to either of you." The silence that followed was heavier than any sermon I'd ever sat through. My son finally looked up from his phone, his face pale. "Dad, you didn't." "I did." Madeline's smile cracked into something raw, desperate. She shot up from the couch, pacing like a cornered animal. "After all we've done for you, after living here, taking care of you." I slammed my palm on the armrest, the sound sharp enough to make Julia jump. "You left me to rot in my bed with a fever. You ignored me while I begged for help. And don't you dare pretend you don't know what you did at that pharmacy." Her mouth opened, closed, then opened again, but no words came. Just a faint sound of Julia's stuffed reindeer squeaking as she hugged it tighter. My son rubbed his face, muttering, "Madeline, please," but his plea was hollow, powerless. I leaned forward, my eyes never leaving hers. "You thought you could kill me for money, but now there is no money for you to take. You lost before you even began." Her face flushed crimson, her jaw tight with rage. For the first time, her mask shattered completely in front of the people she wanted most to deceive. And I wasn't done, not by a long shot, because the next strike wouldn't just be private. It would be public, and it would break her. The first public crack came 3 days later. I invited a few old neighbors over for coffee. Folks who'd known me for decades. Madeline fussed in the kitchen, slamming cabinets, plastering on that fake housewife smile. She thought she could still control the narrative. But I waited until the mugs were filled, the small talk fading. Then I dropped it. "You'll be seeing a moving truck out front soon. My son and his wife will be leaving in 2 weeks. They won't be inheriting this house after all." The words hung in the air like smoke. One of the neighbors, Bill, a veteran like me, arched his brow. "That's so? What happened?" I looked right at Madeline. Let's just say trust was broken. Some things can't be forgiven. Her face went crimson, and she laughed too loudly, spilling coffee on the counter. "He's not well, you know. Fever, confusion. He doesn't mean half of what he says." But Bill cut in, steady as a judge. "Owen's mind is sharp as ever. If he says you're out, you're out." The room buzzed with quiet murmurs, eyes shifting between me and her. I didn't have to explain further. The seed of doubt had been planted, and it was enough. Madeline stormed off to the kitchen, slamming the door. My son sat frozen, embarrassed, his neighbor staring at him like he'd just been unmasked. And Julia, sweet Julia, leaned against me, whispering, "You showed them, Grandpa." That was strike one, stripping away her mask in front of the very community she craved approval from. But I was already planning strike two, and this time it would sting even worse. Strike two came sooner than she expected. Sunday morning, church. The place was packed, holiday crowd still lingering, families in their best sweaters. I walked in slow but steady, Julia holding my hand. Madeline and my son trailed behind, stiff as mannequins. She loved playing the part of dutiful daughter-in-law here. But today, that mask was going to crack. After the sermon, the pastor invited me to say a few words. He'd heard I'd been sick, wanted me to share a testimony of recovery. I stood, cleared my throat, and let my voice carry. Friends, I nearly didn't make it into this new year. But thanks to God's mercy and to the honesty of a child who saw what others ignored, I'm still standing here. The room hushed. I felt every eye on me. I let the pause hang before continuing. And sometimes trials reveal truth. They show us who loves us and who only loves what we can give them. I didn't name names. I didn't have to. Whispers rippled through the pews, eyes darting toward Madeline. She sat rigid, her smile brittle, cheeks burning under the weight of suspicion. My son shifted uncomfortably, shrinking smaller with each sideways glance. Then I said it plain, "I've changed my will. Everything I own will serve veterans and families who actually honor sacrifice. Not a dime will go to those who mistake greed for love." A gasp moved through the congregation, like a gust of wind. The pastor put a hand on my shoulder, nodding with quiet approval. Madeline stood suddenly, her heels clattering against the tile, muttering about lies and delusions. But the eyes that followed her weren't sympathetic. They were judging, measuring, cutting. Strike two had landed, and the third, that one would finish her for good. Strike three came at the lawyer's office. I made sure of it. I'd scheduled the meeting with full intention. Madeline and my son had to be present. I told them it was a clarification session, something about finalizing paperwork. She came dressed to impress. Heels clicking, perfume thick, her confidence stitched back together with denial. We sat across from my lawyer in that polished oak conference room, documents stacked neatly between us. He adjusted his glasses and began reading aloud the new terms of my will. Every word was a nail in her coffin. The entirety of Mr. Owen's estate, including the property and financial accounts, is to be transferred to veteran organizations. Her smile faltered, lips trembling. "There must be some mistake," she blurted. "Surely he didn't mean—" I leaned forward, my voice cutting through her panic. "No mistake. You tried to poison me for money. You think I don't know? There's video. There's proof. The only reason you're not in handcuffs right now is because I wanted you to hear this first." Her eyes widened, color draining from her face. My son's hand shook as he grabbed her arm. "Madeline, tell me he's lying." She stammered, eyes darting, searching for a lifeline that wasn't there. The lawyer, professional but firm, slid the signed documents across the table. "It's all binding." The room felt like a stage, and she was unraveling under the spotlight. I'd planned it that way. Neighbors could whisper. The church could murmur. But here, in a legal office, with papers signed and sealed, her defeat was undeniable. She stood abruptly, knocking over a chair, her voice breaking. "This isn't over." But it was. And now, with her mask shattered in front of her husband, her child, and the law itself. It was only a matter of time before she realized there was nowhere left to hide. The countdown began the moment we got home. I gave them 15 days, no more. My voice carried no anger, just finality. You'll be gone by the 15th. Pack your things. Find a roof you've earned. Madeline exploded. She hurled words like knives. Ungrateful, senile, cruel, her face twisted with rage. My son sat slumped on the couch, staring at the floor, unable to defend her, unable to defend himself. Julia stood in the hallway, clutching her reindeer, eyes wide, watching the two people she thought she could trust unravel like cheap twine. That night, the storm broke in front of the whole neighborhood. Madeline dragged bags out onto the porch, screaming about betrayal, how I'd stolen her future. Lights flicked on across the street. Curtains twitched. Neighbors stood outside in the cold, arms folded, watching. Every eye that once saw her, as the polished wife, now saw her as the fraud she truly was. And me? I stood on the porch in my winter coat, steady as stone. I didn't raise my voice, didn't curse. I just repeated the truth. You tried to kill me for money, and now there is no money for you. Leave. The silence that followed was heavier than her screaming. Whispers spread to the crowd like fire on dry grass. She had wanted this community's respect more than anything, and now it was gone, burned away in one night. For the first time, she realized she wasn't feared or admired or envied. She was pitied, and pity is the cruelest kind of humiliation. As she turned and stormed back inside, I felt the end closing in. One more strike, one last move, and when it landed, there'd be nothing left of her mask to hide behind. I set the last piece in motion like a man who spent his life balancing ledgers, slow, exact, impossible to argue with. I called the property manager first thing, then the locksmith, then the veteran organization whose names sat in my new will. Each voice on the line became a notch on the scoreboard. I didn't want chaos. I wanted order. I wanted the truth to land with the weight of paperwork and witnesses. Madeline screamed when she found the formal eviction notice taped to the front door. 15 days to vacate. Her voice ricocheted down the block. Neighbors leaned over fences, cameras of cell phones catching every syllable. She yanked at it, ripping paper, but the notice wasn't a rumor. It was a legal fact with my signature on it. I watched her unravel and felt no glee, only the clear, cold satisfaction of justice served. Then I walked a mailbox and slipped in another envelope for her and my son, a sealed statement itemizing Madeline's $30,000 debt, credit cards, loans, the quietly accruing interest she thought she'd hide. It was clinical, merciless, and true. When she read it, her face lost color. Pride is a currency, and tonight she'd be bankrupt. I'd arranged for one final witness. Someone from the veteran group would appear at dawn to take possession, a simple symbolic handoff, so the house wouldn't sit empty. No fireworks, just dignity returned to those who deserved it. As dusk tightened into night, I stood on the porch, the house behind me like an old friend. I put my hand on the doorknob, felt the cold metal, and then opened the door. On the top step stood a man in a worn jacket, his posture as steady as mine used to be. He looked at me like he'd seen me before, because he had. The man at the step was from a veterans group, shoulders squared, hands calloused from years of work that didn't make headlines. He nodded to me, then looked past me into the house. We're here to take it forward. Owen, to put this place to good use. Behind me, chaos. Madeline burst out, suitcase half-zipped, mascara streaked from a night of screaming. You can't do this. This is MY home now. She clawed at my son's arm, dragging him like dead weight. He didn't fight back. He just let himself be pulled, hollow and broken. I stepped aside, giving the veteran a clear view of the house. My voice carried, steady enough for the neighbors gathering at their windows. It was never yours. You tried to make it your coffin for me. Instead, it'll be a sanctuary for those who actually sacrificed. Her shriek cracked in the cold morning air. She hurled insults, curses, wild threats. But the neighbors weren't whispering anymore. They were recording. Phones raised, lenses capturing every second of her downfall. 3 public humiliations complete. In my home, in church, and now on the street. The mask was gone for good. Julia tugged my coat sleeve, whispering, "Grandpa, are we safe now?" I bent down, looked into her clear, fearless eyes. Safer than ever, sweetheart. Safer than ever. As the truck rolled up, men in worn jackets began unloading boxes marked with the emblem of the Veterans Charity. The house that once sheltered betrayal now stood as a monument of honor. Madeline's voice faded into nothing as she stumbled down the sidewalk, dragging her broken pride with her. My son followed, silent, his shoulders hunched like a man who finally understood what he'd lost. I stood tall on that porch, the January sun breaking through the clouds, warm on my face. The same door handle I once gripped in weakness now gleamed in strength. This wasn't just survival. This was justice. And as the new owners crossed the threshold, I whispered to myself, she thought she was writing my ending, but all along I was writing hers. If you like this story, please like this video. Subscribe to the channel and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the right.